Right, with that, let's also tell you how U.S. President Donald Trump has been facing political pressure in his own country as the Democrats have now escalated efforts to question his fitness for office. Well, more than 85 House and Senate Democrats are now calling for Trump to be either impeached or removed through the 25th Amendment. This move comes after Trump's recent remarks, including a whole civilization will die tonight, in a clear reference to Iran. Lawmakers have now introduced a striking proposal tied to the 25th Amendment, aiming to create a formal mechanism to assess whether Donald Trump can still serve. Under the proposal, congressional leaders will each appoint 2 members. It would include 4 former high-ranking executive branch officials, specifically vice presidents, secretaries of state, defense and treasury, attorneys general, and of course surgeon generals. The panel will include a final chair as well, selected by the commission itself, potentially a physician or a senior statesperson.
Despite Trump's claims that he is politically untouchable, pressure around him is growing fast. More than 70 Democratic lawmakers have now called for his removal after his threats toward Iran, with some demanding impeachment and others pointing to the 25th Amendment. When Trump was asked about concerns over his mental fitness, he claimed he had not heard them. Then he quickly turned the answer into a speech about how America needed more people like him. But of course he has heard it. Questions about his fitness have followed him for years, and now with lawmakers openly discussing impeachment and the 25th Amendment, those concerns are becoming part of a much bigger fight over whether he is still fit to lead.
But removing Donald Trump remains unlikely, as this process requires the vice president, in this case of J.D. Vance, to agree with the commission's findings. Congress will then need a 2/3 majority vote in both chambers to make any removal permanent. Now, the 25th Amendment, remember, was formulated in 1967 after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It ensures a legal mechanism designating a head of state when the president is disabled or dead. It also includes provisions for both voluntary and involuntary removal of a president. The 25th Amendment was used by George W. Bush and Ronald Reagan for medical treatment. Now, supporters argue this legislation is about preparedness and not politics. The proposal comes as the Senate votes on Wednesday to curb Trump's Iran war powers and ahead of the November midterms that will determine Trump's power in the final 2 years of his presidency.
Medical analysts who have examined Trump describe his behavior as erratic, confused, and increasingly difficult to follow. That concern grew after Trump threatened that an entire civilization could perish if Iran refused his demands, including reopening the Strait of Hormuz by a deadline. Lawmakers and legal experts said the statements sound less like diplomacy and more like a threat of mass destruction, even raising concerns about war crimes.
And my colleague Susan Tehrani joins us live from New York at the moment to get us more on this. Susan, the Democrats, of course, upping the ante against Donald Trump as far as the Iran war is concerned. There is a lot of talk about the 25th Amendment being used. Get us more on how, now, of course, the opposition Democrats are planning to take this forward.
Yeah, this is just another, to be honest, blockbuster production brought to you by the same people that carried out 2 impeachments against the president during his first term, and then that January 6th commission that just dragged on. And an absolute nothing burger, for a lack of a better term, to waste everyone's time and resources. As you mentioned, the 25th Amendment was put forth in case a president gets assassinated, is sick, is injured. It wasn't put forth for someone to be removed from office because the other party simply doesn't agree with their policies. And as you mentioned, it's not only that both houses are controlled by the Republicans right now, the Democrats know this isn't going to go anywhere.
Critics argue that Trump's Iran threats show exactly why he is a danger to global security. NBC News reported on his statement that an entire civilization could perish if Iran failed to meet his deadline. Think about that for a second. This was not a random comment from a campaign rally. This was a sitting American president publicly suggesting that a whole civilization could be destroyed if a foreign nation did not obey his demands. That is why lawmakers and legal experts react so strongly. To them, this was not normal diplomatic pressure. It sounded like a threat of mass destruction, and it raised serious constitutional questions about whether Trump can be trusted with the powers of the presidency.
But is J.D. Vance going to come on board? Is the president's entire cabinet going to come on board? They have to come on board as well. So they know that this is not going to get anywhere, but unfortunately decided to take this course as opposed to more important issues put forth after they had a long recess for Easter. And the first thing that they did, they decided to put on something and puts forth something that is absolutely not going to go through. So a lot of Americans are frustrated, understandably, right now. They want Congress to work for them, and they believe that because this is just absolutely, just unlawful in many ways, it's just going to be a waste of time. But it is going to, heat up the midterms and the conversation around that. So the Democrats are hoping they can change the conversation regarding that.
The push to remove Trump from office is no longer just political noise. It has now become one of the loudest accountability fights of his presidency. More than 70 Democratic lawmakers have publicly called for actions after Trump's threats toward Iran. Some are demanding impeachment, others are urging the vice president and the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment. And some are supporting both paths at the same time.
Morning now, Nate. Some of these posts the president has made, like the one threatening to end a civilization, has drawn a lot of criticism.
Absolutely, Blaine, and from a lot of Democrats on Capitol Hill who are increasingly calling on their Republican colleagues to either push the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment, remove Trump from office, or impeach President Trump. By the way, both those options seem somewhat unlikely. Remember, Republicans are in control of Congress. There were two efforts during President Trump's last term to impeach him. Ultimately, neither of those were successful. No indication that would be successful as well. But just the rhetoric from Democrats really heating up as they push to put limits on President Trump as this war with Iran stretches on. That fragile ceasefire you just referenced appears to be.
One senator said the House should pass articles of impeachment. The Senate should vote to convict and remove him. And if that fails, the cabinet and vice president should step in. Another lawmaker said threatening war crimes is a violation of the Constitution and the Geneva Conventions. That is what makes this moment so serious. This is not just another partisan argument. This is a direct question about whether Trump can still be trusted with the power of the presidency. There are two constitutional paths being discussed. The first is impeachment. The House can vote to impeach the president, then the Senate holds a trial. But actually removing a president requires a 2/3 vote in the Senate, which is an extremely high bar.
I think messaging is the key word, Drew. This is really a messaging tactic or a messaging maneuver to try to underscore what Democrats see as an instability on the part of the president. They are trying to dramatize that by suggesting the 25th Amendment should be invoked to essentially kick him out. There is no possibility that will happen, not least because the cabinet is full of his allies.
And also, in the case of the 25th Amendment being invoked and President Trump being removed from office, it would be, of course, J.D. Vance, the vice president, who would take over. And I don't know if that is going to be considered or would be considered a victory by Democrats. But this actually isn't something that's new, right? During the first Trump administration, there was talk of using the 25th Amendment. Is there any difference that we should consider this time around?
I'm not really sure that there is. I mean, obviously, that quote that you read out about Iran did spark tremors really across the world, not only in the United States, but that doesn't make the mechanics of removing President Trump any easier. In fact, you could argue that his second-term cabinet is even more tightly comprised of loyalists than it was during his first.
The second path is the 25th Amendment. That would require the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to declare that the president is unable to carry out his duties. The vice president would then become acting president. But if Trump contests it, both the House and the Senate would need a 2/3 vote to keep him removed. Otherwise, Trump gets his power back. So the pressure is real, but the process is extremely difficult. That is where the political reality comes in. Republicans still control key levels of power. Many of them oppose impeachment, and Trump's cabinet is filled with loyalists who are unlikely to turn against him. That makes actual removal through the 25th Amendment very unlikely right now. But unlikely does not mean meaningless. This is still one of the largest removal pushes of Trump's current term. It puts his conduct on record. It forced lawmakers to take a position, and it gives Democrats a powerful argument heading into the midterms. Trump seems to understand that. He has reportedly told House Republicans that if they lose the upcoming midterms, he will be impeached. That admission matters because it shows he knows his position could become much more dangerous if Democrats take control of the House. History also shows how explosive this moment is.
In the midterm elections, what do you think what kind of a dilemma do you think Democrats are going to be faced with when deciding how to focus their attention, right? Should they do other things or should they try to impeach the president again?
That is a constant debate in Democratic circles. Would they be better focusing on so-called kitchen table issues, the economy and so forth, or on impeachment? Now, with impeachment, people often get confused between impeachment and removal from office. Donald Trump was obviously impeached twice during his first term. Bill Clinton was impeached. None of them were removed. Neither of them was removed from office. But if Democrats get a House majority, then impeachment becomes much more plausible. Right now, it's hard to see even any Republicans in the House voting for it.
Trump has already been impeached twice before. The first time was over Ukraine. The second time was after January 6th. Both times, the Republican-controlled Senate acquitted him. No president in American history has ever been removed from office by a 2/3 Senate vote. Andrew Johnson came close in 1868, but even he survived by one vote. That history proves how hard removal really is, but it also shows how unusual this moment has become. Democrats are not simply criticizing Trump. They are openly arguing that his conduct raised constitutional concerns. Trump's defenders will say this is all political. They will argue that presidents sometimes use strong language during foreign conflicts. They will say Democrats are using impeachment and the 25th Amendment as campaign weapons. And they will point out that Republicans and Trump's own cabinet are unlikely to support any removal effort. Those arguments matter. Politics is clearly part of this fight.
A major rebuke of the president, a symbolic rebuke, but one showing the concern within the Democratic ranks and among some Republicans over the way the president has been waging this war with Iran. The Senate joining the House in passing a resolution to limit the president's war powers with Iran. If he were to choose to escalate things with Iran, he would be, under this resolution, would have to come back to Congress to get explicit approval to do just that. And that is, of course, exactly the opposite of the way the president has waged this war, has not gotten approval from Congress, has moved ahead with it. But for the first time, we are seeing the Senate and the House speak with one voice on this issue. Just moments ago, 4 Republicans joining with 46 Democrats. Those senators included Susan Collins of Maine in a difficult re-election race, Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, someone who oftentimes does break with the president, Senator Rand Paul, a libertarian-minded Republican, one who opposes foreign intervention for the most part. And there's also Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican who who Trump pushed out of his Senate seat by endorsing his primary challenger, has come back to the Senate and voted against the president, broken with him on some key issues, this being one of them. Republican leaders in the House have tried so hard, Abby, to try to prevent this vote from even happening. When it did pass a few weeks ago, the Speaker of the House actually adjourned the House early when they went to recess to try to avoid a vote from even happening. They ultimately had to vote on this in the House. It did pass that chamber narrowly after a handful of Republicans joined with Democrats, and now we are seeing the Senate follow suit. So a sign here, a message to the president as he comes here to Capitol Hill tomorrow, when so many Republicans, even the ones who voted against this measure, many of them concerned about the deal that his administration is cutting with Iran and question about whether sanctions, for instance, should be eased with that country amid all the questions about its nuclear program. That's going to be front and center as the president addresses Republicans who are very concerned about the way he is waging this war.
A Republican House and a Republican Senate just voted to basically say, time to stop and come to us for approval. That is a pretty strong sign that the president's control, especially over the situation in Iran, is slipping.
But the problem for Trump is that the Iran threat was public. It was not a rumor. It was not leaked by his enemy. It was a statement from the sitting president of the United States. And when lawmakers and legal experts hear language that sounds like a threat of mass destruction, they are not going to treat it like ordinary political theater. That is why this controversy keeps growing. The real issue is not whether Trump will be removed tomorrow. The real issue is that the constitutional conversation has been reopened. Impeachment is back on the table. The 25th Amendment is back in the headlines, and questions about Trump's judgment, temperament, and fitness are now tied directly to national security. For years, Trump has built his image around strength. He presents himself as untouchable, unbeatable, and immune from consequences. But this removal push damaged that image. It shows that a growing number of lawmakers are no longer just attacking him politically. They are formally questioning whether he should remain in office.
In the day's other headlines, President Trump warned his fellow Republicans today that if they don't put in a strong showing in this year's midterm elections, he'll be impeached. Mr. Trump was addressing a meeting of GOP lawmakers at the recently renamed Kennedy Center. He described Democrats as mean and smart, highlighting what he sees as the stakes in the upcoming vote.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
President Trump also urged House Republicans to be flexible in their push to block federal funds from going to Obamacare plans that cover abortion. That's as he pressed Republicans to reach an agreement on the expired health insurance subsidies, saying it would strengthen the party's position on the issue of affordability. Meantime, in Wyoming, abortion will remain legal after that state's Supreme Court struck down 2 laws it found unconstitutional.
Even if Republicans block impeachment, even if the cabinet refuses to act, and even if the 25th Amendment never moves forward, the pressure still matters. It becomes part of the public record. It becomes part of the midterm campaign. And it becomes part of the larger argument over whether Trump has crossed a constitutional line. So no, Trump may not be removed today. The votes are not there right now. His cabinet is unlikely to turn against him. Republican loyalty remains one of his strongest shields. But the pressure is building. More than 70 lawmakers have put removal demands on the record. Impeachment is once again part of the national conversation. The 25th Amendment is being discussed openly, and Trump himself appears to understand that if Republicans lose the House, his position could become much more dangerous. That is why this moment matters. Trump may not be removed right now, but the idea that he is untouchable has taken a serious hit. The constitutional fight is now public. The pressure is on the record, and the road to a possible third impeachment may already be forming.